Now today I'm going to introduce you to the 4 principles of transformative slenderful eating, because this way of eating absolutely works. You've heard my story about discovering the pieces to transforming my results one piece at a time and completely turning around and transforming my body and my life. In fact, one of the reasons I moved to Mexico, where I am right now, is I started seeing that I could live a good 30 or more active years. That wasn't what I was seeing in front of me 5 years ago. So I wanted to move somewhere I could thoroughly enjoy a really active 30 plus more years. No guarantees, right? But things have changed a lot for me. And I'm going to share some of my friends and my clients' transformations as we go along too, because you need to have hope that this can work, that this can work for you when you've been experiencing failure in this area for years. Hope is so important for being able to stick with it all the way to the great results. This eating approach works for a bunch of good reasons that I'm going to be sharing with you throughout the program. And I also want you to know, it turns out that once I discovered the fundamental eating principles that worked, I also discovered these fundamental principles are utilized in some other programs. And it turns out it's not just me and my friends and my clients, but thousands of people have achieved really big transformations in their health and their weight by changing their eating this way. So I keep lists of the amazing results, and I'm going to share them with you throughout the program, but here's a list of them. Improved blood sugar levels, no longer pre-diabetic. I've heard that from a lot of people. That also happened for me. One of my clients' husband, who was eating this way with her, also had that happen. No more hot flashes, night sweats, acid reflux, bloating, and headaches. This person had a long list of things that changed. My menopause symptoms also almost went away. I still get hot flashes sometimes, but I was having terrible symptoms for like 15 years, and I could never go off the menopause supplements until I changed my eating this way. And now I don't have to take the supplements, and my symptoms are much mitigated. Doctor approved them to go off statins. I've known a lot of people that's been true for. Turns out that eating this way is more beneficial than statins, is more effective with less side effects. This person said, 100 days ago, I couldn't walk getting out of bed in the morning. Now I can get up and walk pain-free. She had to step on a tennis ball every morning just to be able to put her feet on the floor and walk. And that changed within 100 days of changing her eating. I don't know, I can't remember what the length of time was for this one, but this person lost 70 pounds. No more body aches. That's something I've heard a lot of people say, and that was true for me. I had just terrible chronic pain and inflammation from a back injury when I was 17 that I just always had to take medications for, and I just really don't have any of that anymore. This person said, I'm free to go and do in a world I used to feel so confined in. And I'm thinking about one of my clients recently talking about just being able to help his wife. I have some men clients, help his wife tie her shoes after she had her knee surgery, or being able to work out in the garden or do painting projects around the house without getting really winded, just being able to work for hours at things he couldn't really do anymore. This person says, in just 2 weeks, my sleep is so much better, and the stiffness and inflammation in my muscles and joints is so much better. So those are things that completely turned around for me. It's helpful for me, though, to see people say this changed in 2 weeks, because I don't remember anymore. It took me so long to make all these changes and get all these results. I should have kept a diary of what happened when, but I do continue to have access to people who tell me, yeah, this has already changed in a short period of time. Migraines are gone, no more irritable bowel, body moves more easily, and I have so much more energy. There are things people have a harder time noticing, like reduced infections. It's one of the things that changed for me is I went from having some kind of virus about 3 or 4 times a year that would get really bad, that I would end up either with bronchitis or an ear infection. I would be out of work for at least a week and feeling terrible for at least 2 or 3 weeks. Now, I think in the last 3 years, I've had 1 cold, and I wasn't even sure that I got the cold because it was so mild. Before this, I had to have a surgery on my ear because my ear infections were causing a lot of hearing loss. So there's a lot of things that we have to pay attention to, like, wait a minute, there's something that's gone away that used to be a really big problem for me. The point being, people can really change their health eating this way. And I'm hoping that you'll find ways to notice how your health is changing so I can share your story next time around. Now, you're going to be learning more about this eating approach every week for 12 weeks, so you can get very clear what to eat and how much to achieve all your goals. Because doing a little of this and a little of that is not going to add up. That's what we've been doing. Almost all my clients have some of the pieces of healthy eating mastered, but other stuff is mixed in that's leading to lousy results. So over the next 12 weeks, you're going to be learning the fundamental principles to absolutely follow that are going to change everything for you, that will take you from confused and perplexed and things aren't working to great clarity and effectiveness and results. We're going to get really specific about what and how much to eat. But when we get the pieces right, more right than we are now, it makes a huge difference in our results. So now I'm going to start orienting you to the 4 fundamental principles of this eating approach today. And I'm especially going to start teaching you a lot more about implementing the first principle so you can get started changing your eating and your results this week. One principle that makes it easier for us is that we add before we subtract. If we start with, I gotta quit eating this bunch of stuff, lots of times we just feel hungry and cravings and suffering. And that makes it really hard. Our brain's not gonna let us keep going with that. It's gonna be like, come on, you deserve this. So let's add before we subtract. And what we add is highly nutritious, life-giving foods. I mean, some people do start right out of the gate implementing everything that works all at once. And if you can do that, you probably will get quicker results. It really does make a huge difference when you implement all the pieces to a certain level. But for a lot of us, it takes a while to get this first one really humming. And it's so key to starting you on the path to success. Because when we eat enough of the highly nutritious foods, our bodies respond in such a healthy, happy way. We get a lot more energy and vitality right off the bat. And we eat enough of those foods that we don't feel hungry. We don't have these cravings and the suffering. And that is a game changer. I mean, can you imagine a weight loss eating plan that works and it doesn't involve hunger or cravings or suffering? I'm going to tell you, it's awesome. Now, I have to admit, I felt like I was already doing this, eating a lot of the highly nutritious foods. And many of my clients felt the same way. They're doing this, or they've done this, eating abundant, highly nutritious foods, and it hasn't really worked for them. What we all discovered is that we weren't quite doing it enough. And once we got a lot more clear exactly what this looks like, and we started implementing it in a way that is effective, it totally changed our results. So my invitation to you now is seek that beginner's mind. Start seeking that clarity. Let's see exactly what are the highly nutritious foods I can eat and enjoy, and how much of them do I need to eat to completely change my results. And we're going to start really exploring that today in this module. So the first principle of transformative slenderful eating is to eat more highly nutritious foods. Remember that I've talked about one of the big problems is that we aren't eating enough of the highly nutritious foods. And so our body has all these mechanisms to drive us to eat more under those circumstances. So we're going to add more nutritious foods before we take things away. And that'll give us a boost of energy. It'll get our body to cooperate with our weight loss efforts. It absolutely changes the game. It's the first thing to really get some success with. I also mentioned we're eating too much of some things. And I call those things cravingful, highly processed, non-nutritious food-like substances, or chip niffles. And I discovered I was eating more of those than I realized. And I think you'll see what I mean as we go along. And we need to eat less of these or eliminate some of these from our diet to get great results without cravings. So we're going to get a lot more specific about that in upcoming modules. So eating enough of the right things, more of the right things, and eliminating or eating less of the wrong things. These are the first two principles that make a huge difference. Probably doesn't sound super surprising, but when you get really clear about all the nuances and you really implement this as intended, changes everything. Now here's another one that really surprised me. I mentioned it earlier. You need to manage the when and how, or master the when and how of eating for a healthy body and a healthy weight. You need to eat on a schedule that really resets things, that works best for your body. And we'll get very specific about that in a couple of weeks. And finally, we don't measure calories at all in this program. And if you haven't seen my video on that, ask me for it. I can send it to you. We have found, though, that getting really specific about the quantities of the different kinds of food you're eating, that really makes a difference. So this really brings it all together. So how will you know if you're eating enough of the nutritious foods and you're not eating too much of the non-nutritious foods? You get really clear about the quantities. In a way, it feels like, oh, I don't want to have to be too clear about my quantities, but that's when you really start to change everything. We just continue to eat too much of the things that don't help, and not enough of the things that really do help our bodies if we don't pay attention to the quantities. And we'll get into detail on that in a few weeks. And so when you put all four of these together, this is when you really start to get great results for your health and vitality and your weight. Now, it might sound like a lot, and you might be feeling a little overwhelmed by it all. But I want you to know many of us started out feeling like this sounds overwhelming, this sounds pretty hard, and we've really discovered over time that having these very clear principles not only gets us great results, but it also makes things a lot easier than we thought. So we start out feeling maybe a little bit constrained by all these guidelines, but we really end up feeling surprisingly freed by them. Now, here's one reason for this. I don't know if you're aware of this, but the research shows that the average person makes over 200 decisions about eating every single day. How does that sound? It sounds exhausting, right? And it is. It absolutely just tanks our willpower, which is why in the morning I would have some willpower after I got up and I would feel like I'm going to eat healthy tonight. But by the evening, my willpower was shot. Well, part of it was making 200 decisions about what to eat and then just going, I'm going to eat what I always eat, what's going to be the most pleasurable and the easiest. I'm not going to fuss over it right now. So we end up really exhausted making that many decisions about eating. So I think this is one reason why following four principles, even though at first it takes some effort to get really smooth following these principles, having them really starts to make things a lot easier. We just really get away from food obsession, from thinking about food so much, from stress over eating when we focus on these four things. So following these four guidelines can really cut down on confusion and stress over eating. All right, so in the next video, we're going to start really learning this first fundamental of transformative eating so you can really start to make changes right away. And the first fundamental start here is eat more highly nutritious foods.